Good afternoon. This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for October 7th around 2 p.m. We have Hurricane Nate closing in on the northern Gulf Coast, expected to make landfall starting tonight going into early tomorrow morning. So using the HurTrack Pro courtesy of PC Weather Products, you can see our system approaching the Plaquemines Parish tonight, and this would be around 5 p.m. And then here we go, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., it would be passing the closest approach to Grand Isle, Louisiana, as it's passing over the southeastern tip of the Plaquemines Parish, and then the system moves north at that point and passes approximately 65 nautical miles to the east of New Orleans, and that would keep the hurricane force wind field, which is inside the red circle and that red donut, east of the metro area of New Orleans, and they would get primarily northerly winds here of tropical storm force, but not any hurricane force winds, and the storm surge would be on the right side of this hurricane, so that's good news for the metro areas of New Orleans. And then we continue forward in time, and we go into 1 a.m. in the morning. This is when it's coming onshore in Mississippi, about 20 nautical miles to the east of Gulfport, so it'd be passing, the eye would be passing directly over Biloxi, Mississippi, Pascagoula, Mississippi, and then in the next position here, the worst storm surge would be moving into Mobile Bay, Dauphin Island, Alabama. You're under the gun. Mobile Bay is going to have a serious inundation of storm surge. I'll show you that map in just a minute. And even over into Gulf Shores, Alabama, they're going to have hurricane force wind gust on the outside fringes of this system on the right front quadrant. Similar to maybe conditions people saw on the east coast of Florida during Hurricane Irma. So that's what you can expect in the Gulf Shores area. There's going to be a lot of wind and a lot of surge moving its way into Alabama and Mississippi tonight. And then as we work through the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., it moves straight north into Mississippi and through Alabama, giving all these areas hurricane force winds. In fact, it still remains a hurricane at 6 a.m. in the morning. And taking a look at the wind swath projections, here we go. Right here, we're talking 104 to 126 miles an hour on the right side of that eye wall that comes in. And let's look over here, maybe towards Gulfport. We're talking same thing, about 89 to 69 to about 105 miles an hour. And then we go over here to the border of Mississippi and Alabama, and we're talking 104 to 126. Then we get into bluer areas, which let's get up near, say, Mobile, for example. We would have 73 to 88 miles an hour. And then over in the Gulf Shores area, we would have 62 gusting to 76 miles an hour. And then over even closer to Pensacola, potentially 48 to 58 miles an hour sustained winds at the passage as this moves on shore. And looking over here closer to New Orleans, so you can see that the winds would be right around 49 to 69 miles an hour, and then a little bit further east of there, we'd have winds gusting to 68, 70 miles per hour in these areas. And then if down here in the Plaquemines, we're looking at winds gusting to 78 miles an hour. So we have the highest winds again on the right side of this system, and it's going to be primarily in Mississippi and going into Alabama. That's going to feel the worst effect from the wind and from the storm surge. Here's a look at the close-up visible floater loop of Hurricane Nate closing in on the northern Gulf Coast. And we can see that the system is much better organized than it was last night. Here's our forecast points showing the projection. Category 2 hurricane moving into the northern Gulf Coast. And let's take a look at a radar, and you can see the radar is beginning to light up. It's already raining in southeastern Louisiana. These conditions are going to deteriorate throughout the night. In fact, the countdown clock is activated at Hurricane City. I'll show you that in just a minute. For Pascagoula, Mississippi, and that shows you how much time you have left until the tropical storm force winds arrive. And here's our watches and warnings, etc. on the map showing our floater loop. And the biggest reason for this system getting its act together are the SSTs, and we've had temperatures around 29 degrees Celsius and that's temperatures right around 84, 85 degrees as this is moving onshore. So plenty of fuel for this to get its act together, and it looks like we're going to have a solid Category 2 hurricane, maybe even bordering on Cat 3 as it makes its landfall tonight. So here is the zoomed-in version of the tracking map on the front page of Hurricane City. And you can see the blinking light is currently on Pascagoula, Mississippi, which is where we think the worst conditions are going to be. And again, at the 5 p.m. advisory, we may shift it to Mobile or we may keep it right where it is at Pascagoula. It depends on the forecast track if there's any shifts or not. But looking at the population centers out in here, we're talking, 6,000 housing units, population around 49,000 people. In Moss Point area, and here just to the west of there we have 26,860 people. So as the darker the color area that represents on the map, the higher the population centers. So again, that right front quadrant, look up here in Mobile, we have a population again of nearly 90,000 housing units, about nearly 200,000 people in the Mobile area. So a lot of people are going to be impacted tonight as this comes in. Again, you can zoom in on these maps and get all this information. That red line there would indicate the hurricane warning zone. So looking at the real nice surge maps here provided by the National Hurricane Center, you can see that the yellow areas would indicate 3-foot inundation of storm surge potential for Hurricane Nate. And the darker the colors, again, the higher the surge. The red areas would be 9 feet above ground. The orange colors would be 6 feet, and the yellow would be 3 feet. And even the blue areas, you could get up to a foot of water in areas that normally don't see water. So again, you have Dauphin Island, Alabama, right in here that could get a 3-foot inundation, especially on the west portions of the island where it's very low sea level. The higher the further east you go on Dauphin Island, the higher the elevation is. That's why you see less of an impact where the higher population centers over on the east side of Dauphin Island. But that is not the case when it comes to the Pascagoula and the Biloxi area. Look at some of the reds up in here. Even if you get up in here to Mobile Bay, look at this. All that water is going to pile up. The yellow area is 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot of water. And this could even be higher if this strengthens more than anticipated. And again, all of this water is being dragged across the Gulf of Mexico. When you have systems that are uninterrupted like this and are moving very fast, it's like a freight train, and that water is going to build up in front of this system, and then behind it, when it's going to be like a kind of like a paddle, just bringing all that water onshore, and it's going to be real bad tonight for a lot of areas. I hope people have gotten out of these low-lying areas so that they don't have to deal with storm surge tonight, because it's going to be piling up in there. So when you click on our current feature, which is Pascagoula, Mississippi, either by clicking the red dot on the map or clicking the link on the top of Hurricane City, it gives you a menu of choices of all the localized information you can gather as this hurricane comes in. And one of the things I like to look at are the webcams. And here we go from Earth Networks. The very first link has all of the cameras from in and around where this is going to make landfall. Here you can see it's raining on these lenses in New Orleans. It's raining in Hattiesburg, Mississippi right now. Arabi, Louisiana. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. New Orleans World War II Museum. All these cams can be found on this page. And then there's other cameras, DOT cameras, etc., that you can keep track of what's happening. Now, a lot of times the cameras go out as hurricanes hit, which because the power takes a hit. And, of course, it'll be hitting at nighttime, so there won't be a lot to see. But you can also go and watch some of the storm chasers that are going to be out there in the impacted areas tonight. Here's Mark Sudduth from HurricaneTrack.com. He's in Waveland, Mississippi. He sets up these remote cameras so that he does not have to be in harm's way, and those cameras will continue filming throughout the night. So keep track of that, HurricaneTrack.com, and go to his live YouTube channel, and he's got his cameras streaming on there. And, of course, you can always check out Twitter. You got Jeff Petrowski inside the storm. Some of the other guys that generally don't stream live on the Internet are going to be there, at least sending the Twitter updates and Facebook updates. Maybe Josh Morgan, I think he's there. Mike Dice is going to be there. Let's see, who else is? Jeff Gammons, Jim Eds, there's a whole plethora of guys that are going to be there filming this thing. So keep checking the Facebook and the Twitter links for all the updates. They may have live video coming out of the area as it's happening. But Mark is probably the best source because he's always live with his cameras. And, of course, Jeff Petrowski on Twitter is live as well. So probably the most important factor to how bad this storm surge is going to be is checking the tides. So using our tide predictor map, let's click on Mobile. And you can see that the system is moving in at a point of high tide. Here you can see we have a low tide at 10:30, high tide at 2 o'clock in the morning. Not a good situation. And then we have the tide going out, and it's a low tide at 11:40 in the morning. But sometime between high tide and low tide is when the storm surge is going to work in behind this system, and it's going to be really bad. So I hope people paid attention to their local officials and know where to go and to get out, because this area is going to flood. All these low-lying areas, definitely if you're in those areas, get out. The areas that are going to be impacted tonight, specifically Pascagoula, Mississippi, is 4 years overdue for a named storm. What I do is keep track of this on the Hurricane City database of all the cities in the Atlantic Basin that are coastal cities, and keep track of return rates of tropical storms and hurricanes. This area happens to be 4 years overdue. In fact, the last time they were affected was back in 2009. Tropical Storm Ida hit the area on November 10th with 50-mile-per-hour winds. So this is going to be a far different animal coming in there tonight. But it's, that's a long time. That's 8 years ago. We've had a system coming in there. So 8 years, these people haven't been affected by hurricane force winds. So be prepared tonight. It's going to be a rough one. I wish everybody the best of luck in these areas. Again, anybody in Mississippi, Alabama, get away from the low grounds, get to high ground, take in shelter if you need to. And in the surrounding areas, Florida Panhandle, over into the New Orleans and eastern Louisiana is probably going to be a more of a wind event. Get in your loose objects and prepare for a night of high winds. And tomorrow we'll have to do the aftermath and see how this all panned out for these areas. Again, wish everybody the best of luck tonight. I'm Jim Williams. Thank you for watching.